It's.
You go to Bristol.
Yeah, that's. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 3:01 in the afternoon. And so now we're about to continue some discussions on budget and from our Vermont Community Action Partnership. So Liz, would like to join us? And I don't know.
Can I invite Rosie to come?
Sure, I think there's another chair there somewhere.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all again.
As well.
Maybe squeeze this in.
Yeah.
Here.
They felt small.
I think not everybody was here last time. It's a full table now. So I'm Liz Sharp. I'm the Director of Community Economic Development and Food Security at Capstone Community Action. I was here a couple of weeks ago talking with you guys about our micro business development program, our volunteer income tax assistance, and our financial coaching. And thank you for inviting us back. I brought my colleague, Rosie Manning Gray. Rosie is a financial counselor, an accredited financial counselor, as well as a business counselor. So Rosie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Rosie. I am originally from Lamoille County. I've lived down here for the last almost 6 years now, loving it. I was a small business owner in Hyde Park for 20 years with multiple businesses. The financial coaching piece is really just so vital. At 17, I graduated high school with a 6-month-old baby. And I have been determined in many ways, had many businesses. And one of the things that with a draw for Capstone is that I get the opportunity to work with young females who are finishing high school while they are bringing up their little babies. So thank you for having us here.
Thank you. So I sent along, I'm going to share my screen. I sent along to, I think it was last week, maybe, a sort of a spreadsheet of some drill down of the data from the community action agencies. I'm not sure if you got a chance to look at it, but I am going to share my screen because I think this is what you were sort of hoping to talk about today, was getting into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty around the details of the numbers and the data that we have. Is everyone seeing that okay? I have a couple of I have a couple of extras if somebody wants to kind of share it with if they're having trouble seeing.
They're taking care of most of it.
Okay. I know, and this is not really a slide. It's like a PDF, so I might have to scroll down a little bit. So we can start. I'm not sure which you want to start with, but we have data for both the financial coaching program as well as the micro business development program statewide. And I just want to talk through sort of both of those to give you a sense of why the numbers may be the way they are, where we could be doing some improvements, and sort of the work that we're doing in the network around financial counseling and micro business counseling. Okay. So I think the first slide is our financial coaching data, and if you were paying attention, and I can't imagine that you would be because it's really very detailed, but in our annual report, you'll see that the numbers are a little bit different in our annual report, and that's because they're reporting on a federal fiscal year and we're reporting on a state fiscal year. So you're not going to say, like, you could say, well, why does this number say that and this number says this? So this is based on our state fiscal year because our grantor has this grant on the state fiscal year. And that's how we report our numbers. And so statewide, in terms of our coaching and workshops, so the folks that we did personal finance coaching with, statewide was 858 unique people. And you'll see that Capstone and CBOEO tend to have higher numbers than some of the other agencies. And the reason is that currently the amount of money that we get from the state for this program is about $34,000 per agency that we're currently getting to fund this program. The responsibility is then on the Community Action Agency to raise the rest of the money to do a full-time equivalent person to be able to provide full-time coaching services. Both Capstone and CVOEO have for many, many years been leading the charge on this for the last 10 years. Capstone, for example, we have really gone above and beyond to get to, because we know this program is really successful and we know that people use the program, that we have been able to leverage other money from private, it's essentially private philanthropy. When I first started at Capstone 11 years ago, we were given a really generous grant from the Northfield Savings Bank Foundation. Both CVOEO and Capstone were given each $75,000 a year for 3 years. That really was sort of the catalyst for our financial counseling program. Northfield Savings Bank doesn't use that model anymore of large grants. So that funding source, and plus they would give it to someone else anyway after 3 years. So while banks are a critical and important piece of us filling the holes, they're a very small piece. They tend to be around the $2,500 to $5,000 ranges to help us out. And more frequently, what banks are going to do is they're going to come to us and say, I'll teach a class, right? I'll do that for free, right? And we're like, well, we teach classes too, right? And so we just need money, basically. And then for Capstone, for the next 6 years after that 3-year grant, we had a very generous private family foundation who put a lot of, they felt very, they had very strong feelings about personal finance. It was related to their child who had taken his own life, and they really wanted to be able to support young people in financial literacy. So for 6 years, they supported us with $50,000 grants. So because of that, our program was really able to build into a very robust and successful program. The following year, so we're talking year 7 or 8, we did get money from the Department of Financial Regulation. I think I mentioned that. I'm finishing up some funding from them right now, but their well has run dry as well. And they just don't, they are leaving, they do have some money. I think the way that we were able to access money from them is through lawsuits. And so if someone has been a victim of fraud or something, the state, gets some money and then they were able to distribute it, but they're giving it more directly to the victims right now and less to like programs like ours to sort of avoid financial fraud. So in this last year, like Rosie's been doing a lot of classes and things on financial fraud, and that's related to our grant with the Department of Financial Regulation. So we have long known that, and CVOEO has also been very successful in getting money. They have a New American population, and a lot of their money can come from New American grants to be able to provide financial counseling to New Americans and teaching them, doing workshops. You'll see that CVOEO does a lot more workshop hours than we do. And a lot of that is around educating. They have a bigger population, but it's also around educating the New American population. And so some of the things that we do, and I can, Rosie, if you want to just sort of talk about some of the things that we do here that we keep track of, is often related to, what a grantor might want us to keep track of. And this is currently what our grantor OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity, as well as the Department of Financial Regulation, we work with them on, what kind of outcomes we wanted to see with folks. So Rosie, if you want to just sort of go over maybe some of these
Sure.
topics of what you're doing with clients, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people who are coming to us, almost the number one thing that they're asking about is they're in debt and they're concerned about their credit. They don't know what the next steps are going to be for them. So we do a lot of coaching around that. We also do a lot of coaching around the savings, right? So as I mentioned, I was pretty young when I had a child. I grew up in a really big family, 8 kids. I didn't hear savings growing up. So for myself and my coworker, who was also one of 8 children, it's been so dear to our heart to really encourage people to open a savings account, whether it's start with $5, and then they can build on that. And it's such a reward. We have a gal that was in the program for 8 years. She finally saved $9 a month, 3 months. That was like the biggest shout out day. Like she just was, she didn't think she could do it. So pretty excited about that. We really, it's teaching, right? It's teaching people. It is helping them understand, like, even if you're saving just a little tiny bit, how it will grow over time. And I use practical, situations, a lot of my own personal downfalls that I've had in my life. Like I've had it all, I've lost it all. And that becomes real for them, right? And then they're like, oh, wow, if you did it, I can do it. I'm like, yeah. We have a really robust class that we teach. It's a series. And this year we're having really fantastic numbers. People are just coming. And the classes, we're talking about fraud, we're talking about end of the year, like what do you do if you get a tax return, right? Did you get stuck somewhere in the last year? Let's think about how you can utilize that money maybe and pay something that's a monthly bill now instead of, right, just pay it up in advance. And so there are 6 classes for the financial coaching. We run them in tandem with our micro business program also. So on Wednesdays, starting next week, anybody wants to come to class for the next 6 weeks from 9 to 11, you can watch a bit of our micro business program. And then from noon till 1, we also do our, we call it money conversations. So it's a open conversation with some slides and whatnot.
And you'll see that like on our, thank you, Rosie, you'll see on our savings, for example, that so Capstone has a unique program where we have a little discretionary money that we do a match savings. You probably remember our IDA match savings. This isn't the same thing, but this is sort of a offshoot of that because we lost the federal funding for that and it just didn't have the same bang for its buck. And so we sort of sunsetted that and focused more on just the financial counseling and education piece. And then each agency has at their discretion, if they want, they can use some of their money that they get from OEO to do matched savings. So some choose to, some can't afford to, they have to use it for salaries. But we have some other discretionary money that we use for, you can talk about the Paid to Save program, the Head Start program.
Yeah, we did an amazing program called Paid to Save. We have done that program 3 times now, I think. And it's an opportunity for
3 years.
For 3 years we've done it. And it's an opportunity for Head Start families to learn and earn at the same time. So they have to do a couple of financial coaching one-on-ones. There might be some classes involved. We change it a little bit based each year. And I think the most we've had enroll into that program was year one. I think we had probably like 30 or 40 people enroll in it, maybe even more. Last year, we had about 20 families. And we also offer it to this Brook Street High School. That's where our under 26 moms who are trying to get their high school diploma. We work really, pretty closely with them. We want to teach them how to be able to save and budget. So, yeah.
Yeah, we actually do sort of the financial literacy module for their learning, their high school learning. So, essentially, as Rosie said, what we're doing in our financial coaching program is really helping people, understand, if they have no credit, how can they build credit? So we offer credit builder loans. We don't offer them, but we partner with area banks for credit builder loans. So they can start with, just a loan of like $200 or $100 and basically make a monthly payment towards that loan, and then they can renew it. And you'll see people's credit scores go up to.
In 3 months' time, if you came to me and you had no score at all, after your 3rd payment, your score is 680 or 690.
And that gets somebody into a rental, right? So we know that if you have a low credit score or no credit score, you may not be able to rent an apartment. So we can help people get renter ready with these kinds of very accessible products for lower income people. So helping people build credit, helping people reduce debt. Student loan debt has been an issue for as long as I've worked there, in terms of, a lot of the folks who were born in the 80s, really took on very large amounts of debt. And a lot of them, just didn't have the wherewithal to make payments, and it has stopped them from home ownership. It stopped them from even getting jobs because their credit is so poor, because they're in default on their student loans, and they don't know about the various payment programs that are out there. So I've helped countless people get out of default in their student loans and into payment plans that are affordable for them. As far as I know, we're sort of the main resource for that is free for people to come and get that kind of assistance. And that would be around like how many people reduce their debt, or, how many people, increase their credit score, that kind of thing. And that would be, something that we would measure based on the folks that we're working with. Does anyone have questions about sort of some of this data here? You'll see, and again, some like SEVCA, for example, Southeast Vermont Community Action, has some lower numbers. They didn't have staffing, so they didn't actually draw down on any grant. It just was left unfilled. So their numbers are just by default going to be lower. And I think both Brock in particular also didn't have quite a full-time position for that. It was a part-time position, so their numbers were a little lower also. So what we're looking for, I think our biggest ask really in our financial capabilities program is for our financial coaching. That's the biggest increase. So overall, for our 3 programs, we're seeking 1.65 million. And that's a $593,000 increase from fiscal year 25. And of that 593, 358 of that is for financial coaching. So a large chunk of that is to be able to provide financial coaching without the worry of finding another funding source that is it's really honestly starting to dry up these sort of philanthropic and grants. There are some grants out there, like large federal, not federal government, but like, private grants that are open to anyone in the country. They don't look at Vermont. They don't look at, a small community action agency. And we do partner occasionally, we will partner on larger grants, but we just don't have, necessarily the numbers that some of these larger funding sources are looking for.
Can you repeat that budget ask? I don't have any documents.
Sure, I can actually, if you want to take this, pass that down.
Was it in the presentation from?
Yeah, in fact, I think it's actually,
Okay, so I can pull that.
yeah.
I recognize this from that presentation.
Yeah. And, so as far as the financial coaching data, before we move on to the micro business data.
Sorry, can you just talk a little bit about, is this the same base funding as last year? Is there an increase or not?
So-
And the governor's recommendation.
Is it in the governor's recommend, right? Like all of the pieces that,
And maybe Matthew, can you help me with that answer?
Sure. For the record, Matthew DeGroat, Action Circles, working with the Vermont Community Action Partnership at the State House this year. It is level funded in the governor's recommend. It's in the Office of Economic Opportunity budget, section B 325.
593.
It's well, the financial coaching is level funded at roughly $170,000. So that's why the increase is being requested.
that's what I don't have any of that number, so I don't know like what the current base is, what the, what additional funding you're asking for.
Okay, here's another,
Programs.
I think I can give you all 3 of these.
That would be incredibly.
It is on there.
It's
Right here is on this one here, you'll see what is current, and then to the right, what our request is.
That's how I found it too, that I didn't see the detail.
And then for the FY 26 request, how is that getting distributed among the various organizations? Because it looks like SEVCA does not have the same level of resourcing that CVLEO or Capstone has. So do you guys work to kind of level that out at all?
Yes, so currently, we all just get the same amount of money, the $33,000 or $34,000. That's the 170 that we currently get. We just divide it 5 ways. That's how OEO does it. With VITA, the volunteer income tax assistance, actually, I won't even go into that, but they're a little bit more equitable. They'll give the lower performing group a little bit more of a grant that we get, because it's sort of it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't have the money, you're not going to be able to serve more people, right? So if we were to receive funding that would support a full-time financial coach at each agency, everyone would get the same amount of money. So we would each get, I think our request is like $104,000 per agency. It's somewhere around that. That would support a full-time coach at SEVCA. So SEVCA would now have money to be able to hire someone to be able to do that job.
Right. No,
And so presumably their numbers would go up. We would hope that their
Right.
numbers would go up.
but I guess my overall question is, so if they are still sort of out of, like, I guess if the other organizations are also able to tap in, it seems like maybe CVOO and Capstone have more capacity to handle grants, to handle admin.
There's probably some truth to that, yes.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, how do we get our other organizations up to that level too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the good news is that we have quarterly meetings with, so we were very much more a network partnership over the last few years in terms of not just these programs where we do meet monthly as all 5 agencies to talk about what we're doing and the kind of work we're doing. But our finance directors, they all get together on a regular basis for all 5 community action agencies. The VCAP directors meet on a regular basis, and they are building their capacities. It definitely takes time.
Oh, yeah.
And, now with our federal funding in jeopardy, we have concerns for sure. But we still, I think if we are our micro business, for example, which currently is fully funded, it's not quite fully funded, but it's funded enough that we can piecemeal some other things together to get a full-time equivalent. They have some really good results in their micro business, and they're really building up their program. So it, really depends on, a number of things like staffing, like you said, and even finding capable people. Sometimes it's hard to find capable people in some of the, far reaches of the state.
I'll add to that too. One of the things that myself and my coworker Mary Johnson have done is, as new people have come into the CAP agencies, is we've kind of taken them on to train the trainer, right? Coach the coach. And we worked pretty long and hard with NECA to the point that we're good now, right? With their financial coaching. So we do have these partnerships within our agencies.
And I will say, and that's a really important question, because when I come to testify, I'm testifying on behalf of the whole network, right? So my success is contingent upon their success, right? We have to be successful as a network, right? And so we really do, like Rosie said, mentor some of the new staff that may come on, share with them the resources that we have, so that we can get, a lot of this. And at this point, we're all sort of teaching the same thing, right? We might have a slightly different curriculum, but we're teaching all of the same topics, and everyone is getting that information statewide. But It's just in different levels, I would have to say.
I guess,
Exactly.
like to that point, are you all able to leverage the resources that you have collectively to go after grants and that sort of thing and kind of distribute them among the organizations?
So, yes, so like we did. And again, some of this has to do with capacity, like you said, right? So like the Department of Financial Regulation grant, for example. We partnered with CVOEO and Capstone both applied for that because we were ready to apply for it. We had the numbers, right? We had the ability to say, this is the work that we've done and this is the work that we can do. But at that time, some of those agencies didn't have that. NECA has, in the last year, really built up a program. They were able to get some funding. So their program, is, I think, doing quite well for sort of its first year of full-time position. And Brock has always had financial coaching. It's just been sort of on a less of a full-time basis. It's the staff person that they have, and they just haven't necessarily had the resources to make it completely full-time. There was some time like during COVID when we had some extra monies and we were able to ramp up a little bit. But now all that money has obviously dried up. So the idea is that if we can get fully funded, we can build these programs up. And I believe that it's definitely possible to do that. If we have consistent funding and we can, and we know that it's going to be there, we can provide Sevka and Brock can provide the same level of services that the rest of the agencies are doing. And NECA's building up.
I'll add one more piece to that, which is, again, with NECA, they happen to use one platform of collecting data that we do. And so when they had a pretty big change up there, they reached out to myself and asked for guidance. How do we collect this data, right? And so while they were bring on somebody new, right, to learn this program called Go Engage, I was kind of the teacher for them, right? Like these are the data points and this is how we have it established so that I have a background in accounting. So the data is so important to me. So I think the collecting piece could also be a little bit different from agency to agency. I just like my numbers to be reconciled at the end of the month. So it's an important piece for me.
Yeah.
I think you said this earlier, but I didn't catch it, and then I was trying to find this document. So what is in the governor's budget? Like, I know your request, but what did what does he
So he had,
propose?
he is proposing,
Level,
yeah, level funded,
we increase it all. Okay.
financial coaching is 170,300. So that's about 34,000 something per agency. Our request is 528,000.
Yep.
For micro business, they're at 493,335, and we're requesting an extra coach as well as a small cost of living increase, so 581,000. And then Vita, we're looking from, instead of 400,000, 548. And that was to make this a full-time position. Right now it's like 70%.
Thank you. Helpful.
And these are, I want to say, these are really good jobs. These are professional jobs that are, people, we go through a lot of training for all of these programs. Both Rosie and I are accredited financial counselors. We have to keep up our accreditation every year. We have to take classes and do credits and things like that. So, we're providing, important knowledge to people and also, paying, having good jobs for people in Vermont, in the nonprofit world.
And again, when our coaches are sitting for or taking their AFCPE testing. For some of us, it took us a year to do the entire thing. It was very intense. I helped coach all of the energy, Green Saving Smart coaches, right? We all did it together.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I think everybody passed.
Everybody passed.
Everybody
Yeah.
passed. So we really do really try to collaborate with each other and like coach the coach, train the trainer kind of thing.
I know, I need to say the unpopular thing.
You please do.
It's okay.
I mean, it's 5 organizations doing the same work across the state. I know you're independent nonprofits trying to work together, but it's 5 executive directors, it's 5 business offices, right? It could be done more efficiently. And the argument that is if we didn't have 5 different organizations, all different parts of the state wouldn't be served is very clearly not a good argument based on the data that you're showing us, because it just depends on hiring people in certain places, right? Or being like, so I just, I, as money gets tighter and tighter, we just have to keep looking at how to serve Vermonters the best and how to get those jobs on the ground to the people that provide direct services right there. And I think that's what you're asking us to do in one sense. And in another sense, I'm saying, is there a way to be more efficient, right, with these programs and with the programmatic setup? And again, we can't tell you nonprofits to combine. That's not our job. But what we can say is there a way for you all to work together in a way that is more efficient to provide better services to Vermonters? And that's, no, it's not a popular thing to say, but I know that I'm not the only person sitting here thinking.
If I could just add on to what Edie's talking about, one thing about that, that would make you a larger organization where you might attract the attention of some of the national funders. Because now instead of serving, 500 people here, 200 people here, now you're serving thousands.
Yeah, I mean, I think statewide, we serve about 40,000 people statewide. And you're right. I mean, there is some discrepancy among services and the ability to provide. We don't have, I mean, we do get something called a community service block grant, which is from the federal government. We hope we continue to get that grant. And that is distributed a little bit differently to each agency based on their capacity and what they, how many people they serve. Our weatherization program, for example, that is done very much in collaboration, with each agency and working with OEO. But you're right. I mean, there are, and I think it's kind of like let's have 5 superintendents, right? Instead of 250, right? So I think that, for us, the 5 really did come out of a geographical, piece of like what Vermont's landscape is like, and being able to serve, we would probably still have 5 buildings, right? Because you need to have a food shelf, you need to have the housing services, you need to have the Head Start offices, right? People aren't going to travel all over the world or all over the state to try to get a service.
You have to go to people where they are. And
Yeah.
I truly appreciate the work that your
Yeah, I know.
organizations do. I'm a huge supporter. I'm a big fan. I just can't print money.
Yeah.
So I should talk a little more about, we have 5, but we have a difference, I imagine, not just in the amount of people being served per region, but probably also in the size of the organizations and their budgets. So probably we see some scale throughout the 5, and it may be helpful to understand a little more. Would this adjustment in the budget mean, based on how these things will be allocated, that's a blank % increase for one of these 5, it's a blank % increase for one of these other 5? The way that you're I appreciate the detail that's provided in here, and it may be useful to us to see also how those resources are being distributed throughout the state, knowing that it's not each of the 5 pieces is 20% of the
Yeah.
total. And I think that might be also helpful in getting a sense of, it's sensible that CVOEO and Capstone, based on where they are, have a little more half those organizations. I imagine a lighter footprint for some of the other 3.
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that question in terms of the percentage. I will say that our economic development programs are sort of the smallest piece of the community action agency programming. Our biggest are housing, well, really our biggest are Head Start and weatherization. And so, that's where the majority of our employees is Head Start and weatherization. And then we have something called Family Community Support Services, which does the housing, the fuel assistance, and the utility assistance. And then we have my programs, which are sort of the smallest, which are the VITA tax program, financial coaching, and MBDP. And I also oversee the food shelf, but that also we have 1 staff per each program is really what it boils down to. So I have a very small staff. I have like 5 people. And so this money that we're asking for is very, I mean, my budget is very bare bones, right? There's not conferences, there's not food, there's nothing like that. It's essentially salaries. It's fringe, it's indirect. And it might be some mileage, right? And maybe a computer every 5 years. So it's a pretty bare bones budget. The percentage, I'm probably, I think our budget is like 20 million at Capstone, and my budget is 2 million, maybe. So, most of it is Head Start, and so the percentage increase, is huge in terms of, but I could probably try to figure that out.
Well, maybe you can.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I'll help. I'm always reaching out to the other community action agencies. I'm like, hey, guys, I need some data on this and that. So, we are very much a partnership. I do want to stress that. We are not like, working on our own. We definitely are a partnership. I have monthly meetings with staff that are like people like me. You have monthly meetings with coaches. We have business, coaching get-togethers and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of collaboration, but you're right. There is some inequity by default. There is some inequity around the state, just based on what, it can be based on executive directors too, right? I mean, when Sue Minter was our executive director, she really lifted up all 5 agencies, right? And she knows a lot of people, was able to bring in a lot of money for us. It was also COVID, it was also flood, like there were a lot of things happening, but that makes a difference. So.
Just to piggyback on what Jonathan was asking, do you have a sense of who's not getting served that needs your services?
Good question. I will say the people who are getting served right now, the biggest barrier that we've eliminated is that almost every person does an appointment by Zoom. And our no-show rate has gone down significantly. So I would say, in my personal experience, I would say the most fragile ones are going to be a little that will either are not sure or they're embarrassed and they finally make the call when they're really in a dire strait situation. I've had a couple of those in the last year. Lady didn't want to leave her home, wheelchair bound. But we did some incredible work together to reduce her monthly debt, and she's going to be okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, it would be, I don't know if you have like those, I'm sure they're hard numbers to track down, but it would be nice to see, how many folks are actually receiving your services and how many folks, if you have like an estimate on who's not able to access them and what kind of need there is still to fill.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say too, we have an income requirement, which is through OEO, which is 80% area median income. So there is, and I will say, if someone calls me and they have some horrible story, I'm not going to not help them, right? And I help them, even if they're over income. But in general, the people that we're working with are below 80% area median income. And, the other thing too is, especially around something like financial counseling, someone who is without a home, they're a hard person to work with, right? Because they don't have any resources. And so we can certainly sit down with them, but like there's a lot of work that needs to be done for someone who is currently unhoused and has no resources whatsoever. I mean, there are people who come to our food shelf who say, I don't have any income. I don't know how they're living with zero income, but that's what they say. They say they have no income. And it's probably true. And so, those folks, you think, oh, they need financial counseling. It's almost like first they need some money before they can have some financial counseling.
The other piece to that too is, speaking of the homeless population, in this last year, I worked pretty closely with our housing team and kind of gave them an overview of, this is what we do and this is how we can help them. And so, for example, somebody who comes in to housing, housing is now pretty quickly referring them to me because usually there's something on their credit report. I have a gal who has a $6,000 ding on her credit report because mom put a utility bill in her name, right? Or the person who 2 weeks ago was living in their car and I just happened to know somebody and said, contact this person. My brother's been homeless for the last 10 years and within 48 hours, this person's now housed. So I think we are catching more of the people that we were not in our homeless community because we're working even closer within our community, right, at Capstone Community Actions to let them know that, okay, there is help for them. We have letters that we can assist people with. Their judgment proof, that's been huge. We're starting to see that they send out that judgment proof already typed up and ready. And it says, I basically qualify because of A, B, C, and D. They send that into the creditor and we're starting to see that debt come off their credit report, right? 600 is a score that this area is looking for when it comes to housing. So for some people, they might be just that far away, right? So I think what you're asking for is that's a hard one to answer because we're just starting to see, I think with the homeless population, I'm seeing more and more people and they are willing when they come to me, no shame, no judgment, right? Like, it doesn't matter where you've been. Let's just talk about how we can get you from there to over here, right? And then you start seeing them come back again. Now they're ready to maybe take a class and listen. They don't have to participate. They can just listen to the information. So, yeah.
Just 3 quick points. First point, I want to just say that I'll send you on the heels of this session a very easy to see snapshot of what each agency is receiving for each one of these programs and what they would receive if they were to receive their requests. The second point I want to make is that every one of these programs multiplies the dollars that you put into it. So financial coaching, they've been talking about, for example, how when people improve their credit scores, they're able to get into a rental they might otherwise not be able to get into. And that helps people avoid falling into the costly cycle of, for example, being unhoused, and the costly crisis response systems that are required often to address that kind of situation. The microbusiness program, I think the 2023 jobs report from the Public Assets Institute noted that 70% of the new jobs created in Vermont in 2023 were created by new businesses. So the microbusiness program is creating those businesses. It's part of the economic engine of the state. And the tax assistance program in 2024 helped people get $4.6 million in tax returns, and $2.4 million of that was refundable tax credits. So that's millions of dollars that's being pulled into the Vermont economy that folks otherwise would not be getting because they either don't know they're eligible or they're not filing taxes. So every one of these programs are programs that are multiplying the dollars that you invest in. And then the third thing I want to speak to is efficiency, which I understand. There is not one community action agency that's serving less than 2 counties in the state, and the majority of them are serving at least 3. So these are not serving a town or a small area, they're serving large geographic areas of the state. And for 60 years, they've been on the front lines of anti-poverty efforts in the state of Vermont. So there's efficiency, but there's also being able to be responsive to local conditions and local concerns and things that happen in one region of the state but aren't happening in others. So there's a real balance to strike there. I don't think the caps are on the wrong side of that balance, I guess is what I would say. So.
I would agree with that on the flooding piece too, because flooding was very much, concentrated in the Capstone area. And I think maybe Brock area and NECA, CDOEO didn't have, we had, our executive directors were like on the front lines, like we got to help people, right? Raising money to help. We help the businesses with our Main Street Flood Relief Fund. Through our micro business program, we manage that. And, I think Matthew's right that there are there's a, one area of the state may have something different going on or different climate, different poverty levels even, right? And so, I think the model of the 5, we definitely need to have, I believe, 5 buildings at the very least in agencies, so.
I was going to touch on that also. Last year, between September to the end of December, mind you, I am considered a half-time financial coach, counselor, and half-time micro business. I had 130 referrals from September to December. That's a lot of people in a very short amount of time. I'm primarily working with Washington and Orange County, back up to Lamoille County, but they were mostly all from down this way. Now, a good chunk of those were regional clients that had been affected, right? But also people who were just in dire straits. They did not know what to do. And I'm just one person.
We do have another coach to make up a full-time equivalent. So Mary Johnson is in our Memorial County. She covers half business and half financial coaching as well. This is some of our numbers for the MBDP, our micro business development program. And so some of the stuff that the data that you see on the left is primarily what we collect for our funder, Office of Economic Opportunity. And so we worked with just under 700 participants, unduplicated participants last year. And so some of the things that we track for them are business startups. So how many new businesses start up? And that was 73. And then an additional 53 expanded their businesses. And an expansion may be that they hired someone or that they, opened up a storefront or something like that. And we created 60 full-time equivalent jobs through our micro business development program. And then our folks leveraged just under 700,000 in capital for starting their businesses. And it looks like most of those came from sort of grants and owner equity. Voc Rehab has been a partner.
Yeah, Hireability, we partner with Hireability. We get lots of referrals. People who are disabled, they want to work. They have this limitation, right? We can only work so much or we're going to lose our benefit. They still want to be out doing something in their community. And it's just amazing when they come through the classes, and we just have this amazing relationship with Hireability now. That we know what they need, they know what we need, and it's been really amazing to work with them.
So so again, you'll see some of theirs that, Sevka, for example, didn't have anyone, or they have someone now. So for their numbers are a little bit lower. CDOEO has more than one. They have other funding that they receive from like the city of Burlington. So their numbers, and they have a lot of people. They're the ones who are requesting an additional coach because they have, I think, 2 full-time equivalent coaches. there's three, but there's like two part-time and then a full-time. So they're very busy and they have a 4-week waiting list for their micro business development program. Yeah, I did actually reach out to them too, because I was testifying last week in Senate Commerce, and they were asking like, oh, how many businesses went on to become big-time businesses? I'm like, well, our famous one is Switchback, but like Rosie, you worked with the East Callis General Store as a business coach, and you guided them for quite a while through that process. Yep, of acquiring funding. There's a company up in Burlington. I've never heard of it, but they recycle, but apparently it's very popular there. They recycle mattresses.
Oh, yeah, I know that company.
Yeah, so they started out working with our micro business development program. If you remember Samosa Man, he's still in business. He started out with us a very long time ago. And now he's got like 3 locations in New England. So, there are, there's a lot of businesses that are just, again, the sole entrepreneur, right? Just the person doing their business. Rosie, who was a business owner for many years, also always had a W-2 job, right?
did.
Right. And so a lot of our folks are like that. They'll have a W-2 job, but they will also have a business on the side.
Or they'll want to be done with that W-2 job. And I tell them a good story about their social security and do you save 15.2% right now? And if they say no, then I say, okay, we'll start with that. Start putting that 15% aside first, an extra 10 for your taxes out of your gross from your side hustle, right? And we don't want to deter people, but I give them real numbers. I tell them it's fabulous to be a small business owner, but at the same time, it's like having a baby that never gets past 2. It's 24/7. Yeah.
Are there any questions on this data that we have here from our statewide partnership?
You heard the successes, but how many businesses are failing? And we know businesses fail, so it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But, the clients that are being served, how many are starting businesses, they're failing?
Yeah.
We know many of those, then try something else. And because I think, entrepreneurs, there's some successes, some losses. Go on and they try something else and.
I did it 3 times. I did it 3 times. I had a business set up in the basement of my house as a personal trainer. That was the first 16 years of my business. Out of 20 years, the last 16, I was an orthopedic massage therapist, and right in the middle for 13 years, I was a landlord. So I like that question, which makes me think that, okay, I need to run a report and maybe in my busy schedule, start touching base with who is still, and send out something as far as, are they still in business? So I'm going to put that one up here and I'll try to work on that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to understand, the failures. But then, people that really want to see something happen are then going to try something else. And I just think it's interesting to understand not just all the good things that are happening, but failures that are happening.
Yeah.
And then how they transition into something different. Do they then decide this isn't for me and I'm going back to working for somebody else, or?
Well, I can tell you that year 7 and 8 in my own personal business, I was getting ready to take out a business loan and was running a great successful business. And I decided that I wanted to go bigger and move my location from my private property. And so I took out a business loan for $25,000. And I wish I had a Mary Johnson for somebody else who had said to me, let's take these numbers. You're giving them the best case scenario. And because I have a background in accounting and they saw my 7 years prior, they were like, we got the 25,000, right? $625 loan for 5 years. Year and a half later, I had to tuck my tail, go to Howard Nosh and say, I'm sorry, I need out of my lease. And he was more than generous to me. He wanted to help me. And I said, you know what? I'm right to here and I can't owe anybody. It's just not in my being. So I packed everything up, brought it right back to my personal studio that I had on my property and lived out of it and ran my business for the next 3.5 years. And I tell people all the time, I got the pleasure of paying that loan for 3.5 years. Right? I know it was, but so that's, yeah. I wish I'd had somebody like a Mary Johnson to look at my numbers and challenge me. I did that with the East Palace General Store. Like best case scenario, go middle road and then go, like, if you're not really even, like you're barely, what's the bare bones? And how does a lot of work to do a cash flow projection. Jessica did amazing with it. So
I think she's doing pretty well right now.
she's doing okay.
Yeah.
She's doing okay.
And it's that transition, from starting small, that next step, and where do we go? Who do we talk to? We just go it on our own and, you found out. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. Sometimes we need that person to talk to. We need that organization that can help us understand what we're getting ourselves into and do the numbers work and all of that stuff. What are the projections for that type of business going forward?
Yeah, we do have a list, and I think we can get access to it. It was Brock that managed, the Embrace Grant program. So we served like over 400 businesses with those Embrace grants. And, I will say anecdotally, when I was preparing for this last time I came and visited, there were 5 businesses that were quoted in our final annual report. And 4 out of 5 were still in business today. One, I don't know what happened to them, but I think that I would venture to guess that, we're on par with the national average of businesses that don't survive, right? Because most small businesses don't survive. But we are also not, a lot of our people are not the storefront businesses, right? So they are,
Small.
they're small, they're micro businesses, right?
They might be making 1,000, maybe 2,000 a month, right? But I do like your question and it will prompt me to go in and create something in Microsoft Forms and get something sent out to our small businesses. It's only going to be Capstone because I only have my data, right? But it would be interesting to see who is still in business today. I think they did do that 2 years after Embrace. But I was too new at Capstone, so I don't remember what the number was for the businesses that were still in.
Yeah, because that's been a question that it gets asked a lot. And a lot of it too is just the bandwidth and the, it's hard to find the time to reach out to 400 businesses, see if they're still in business, but yeah.
Questions? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I know this is your last thing of the day, so we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us and to consider it. And again, we are looking for an increase in both in all 3 micro business VITA tax program and our financial coaching program. I hope you will consider that. Thank you.
We so appreciate the work that you do across the state.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And we appreciate the work you do because I know it's not easy. We have to make some tough decisions. So thank you. I'm glad we can help you make those decisions.
That's the end of our day today. So again, 9 o'clock tomorrow. The Demont Ferry will be here, chat with them for half an hour, then, we have the, Council General candidate coming in. Chat with us, unfortunately, the Quebec delegate to New England is, sick, so he won't be able to make it. So, I've heard that Jordan will be with us, and we'll have just a roundtable discussion with her on, again, you know, our ties to Canada. And how important those ties are, our relationship with Canada, so. Then it's CTE for the rest of the day. As far as we can get anyway. We'll see how that goes.
The report's on our website.
Yeah.
So if you hadn't had a chance to look at it yet, it's on our website for today.
Yeah.
So.
And then back to what we got Friday from Career Center in Newport, we'll be having those discussions as well. I think that the report you talk about.
Yeah, so that was their response to the report.
Yeah, to the APA.
Is it a two-pager?
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think
thank
it's-
you.
I think it's on the webpage.
Thanks, Rosie. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I know.
But yeah, it's posted. Okay, any questions?